This is my bucket of scraps, and I need to finally organize this so I can actually start using all the materials that are in here. So let's get started. I have been avoiding this task for years, but over the years, I have gotten so many questions of like, what do you do with your scraps? How can I use my scraps? And to be honest, I've really only done one project using almost exclusively scraps, and that was a long time ago, and this bucket is like crammed full of scraps, and I feel like because I haven't organized them and I don't have any sort of system to organize them, I just don't use them. I just keep shoving them in here, knowing that a day like today would have to come for me to actually do something with them. Oh my gosh, are you seeing? Let's just dump them all out and see how much is truly here. Oh my gosh. It's literally, oh, can you see it's in the shape of the bucket because they were so crammed in. It's like a bale of scraps. Okay. Sometimes I don't know why I do the things I do. I think what happens, and maybe you can relate, is that at the end of a project, it's just overwhelming. You're just like, I just need to be done with this. And I just end up sort of cramming the scraps in the buckets, not realizing that there's actually quite a bit here. Now, what I'm thinking is to mostly separate these by color, but secondarily, is that a word? I want to separate the actual yarns from the wool roving, because I think the little wool roving scraps, some of them might not necessarily be the best for weaving, but they might be great for needle felting or something like that. Now, I have a lot of off-white scraps. I think I just have to start making piles. I have some containers that I want to actually organize these in so that when I'm doing projects in the future, I can actually go to the bucket that has the colors already separated, and I might be able to use things from them. Now, what I'm hoping to do after this as well is to actually make something that is as close to entirely made of scraps as I can get. One thing I've always wanted to do with weaving, and I've been wanting to do this for years and I don't know why I haven't yet, is do some sort of almost paint by number kind of picture, but weave it, which is essentially just tapestry. But I thought it could be really fun to use scraps for this and make it more of a shaggy style weaving using all scraps, if possible. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if I have enough colors to quite do that here, but we won't know until we split these all up. I'm really realizing how long this is gonna take. You know, sometimes what's nice about making videos is it gives you a greater purpose to do some tasks you don't always love, because you're like, but if I film it, then it's sort of like doing two jobs at the same time. That's my logic anyway. I think it will be somewhat satisfying to have all of these things just split up. I could probably have one bucket that has green, teal, and blue all together. I might actually get a bucket for the wool roving just right now, so I can just toss it all in one. And then I might go through it again to separate the colors, but I think I have a lot less merino scraps than I do yarn scraps. Ah, the fresh smell of plastic. Ugh. All right, so I'm gonna have this bucket, I think, off to the side just because I'm running clearly out of table room. And I'm gonna toss all of my merino scraps in here, and then I might go through them again to separate them, just depending on how much is in here and if it's too overwhelming. Like, why did I even put this in here, for instance? Like, this is a really nice long piece. This is not really a scrap. So I'm gonna actually put this into my wool bins, which are over here, and they're sort of all organized by color already. But other little scraps like this one, definitely in the scrap bin. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was organize things like drawers and stuff. My mom would always give me that as a chore to like go through the junk drawer and clean it out and organize it. And for whatever reason, I loved that. as an adult, I don't enjoy that process as much. I actually find it really mentally draining because it's like making a million little decisions. I had no idea the extent of my scrap bin. I didn't. I really didn't. Okay. I'm gonna start a bin. I'm gonna go ahead and start an off-white bin because I know this one's gonna probably get full quickly. Like, I mean, look at all of this. There's gonna be endless off-white. So they can have their own dedicated bin. Let's see how far I get in 20 minutes. Let's just see how far I can get, okay? We're starting the timer, let's go. Imagine if I had just, from the very beginning, had bins for my scraps and just organized them after every project instead of now putting myself through this task. Okay, I'm checking in after a 20-minute timer. I don't remember what this pile looked like when I started that timer. I mean, these other piles are growing and look at how much off-white we have. There's gonna be a lot of off-white. I might have to make an entire piece that's just off-white. Seeing the other piles grow is making me realize like this is getting smaller, but it is kind of slow going because this isn't like big chunks of yarn necessarily. A lot of the pieces are quite small, so I think that's why it just is going to take a long time. The result of this is actually going to make my life easier, which I am excited about, because now if I'm like, okay, I'm making a piece and I'm using yellow and pink and blue, I could go to my scraps first before I take more yarn off one of the bigger balls of yarn and try to use up some of that first. What I really want to do is almost like I'm sorting these as they're my paint colors, so that if I do want to do something that's a little bit more painterly, now I have all these organized so I can just quickly grab the bin for each color and make something cool. So this time, let's set a timer for 40 minutes and see how much more I can get done in 40 minutes. Okay, are we ready? Go. Here's the progress I made in now another 40 minutes. So I guess I've been doing this for well over an hour now. But this pile of unorganized yarn is much smaller this time, which is helping me stay a little bit more motivated. I do have some sort of mixed up color piles going here, but you can see like the green one is really big. It's also going to be really great to see the obvious, like what colors I end up using most often by doing this. And honestly, it is kind of interesting. Like I don't have much, well, this pile is smallest, and this is sort of a mixture of red and purple. So that one's definitely kind of the smallest. And then we've got yellows and oranges. The yellow pile is decently big. The pink pile is huge. But of course, the biggest pile is the off-white. We have a lot of off-white because that's what I have a tendency to use for fringe and for a lot of just like background coloring. I do love off-white, so that's why I've used so much of it. But it's kind of interesting to see, and maybe it'll make it easier for me moving forward to kind of recognize for myself what colors I might want to try to use more, because I'm like, okay, I've used these colors a lot. What else could I use? I'm gonna do another 20 minutes just to see how much further I can get in 20. So, starting another timer, let's go. I am now so close to being done. I will say, this has actually taken less time than I initially expected it to. There are some pieces in here, you'll notice that as I get closer to the end, they're getting smaller and smaller. So there is going to be some that I am gonna just toss because I'm not gonna really be able to use them. But I think like even if I were to throw out all of this, considering all that I've sort of saved by organizing them, I think that's actually a pretty decent ratio. But I am sort of going to go through now and start picking apart some of the ones that I can see are going to be a little bit too short to really use for anything. Honestly, I'm pretty proud of what I've been able to accomplish today. And I didn't really, I don't know. I think something that's really hard when you're an adult and you've got, you know, responsibilities and work and everything is taking the time to do stuff like this. It feels a little bit like, at least for me, it sometimes feels just like, oh, is this like a good use of my time? Like, can I justify taking this much time out of my day to organize yarn scraps? Like, that's something I really struggle with, to be like, is it worth it? But I would say it is worth it in the sense of just saving all this yarn alone. And by saving, I mean, I already saved it. I didn't throw it out. But I think by organizing it, it means I'll actually, I'm way more likely now to use it and to come up with ideas of how I could use these scraps, because being in an organized, having them all organized is going to make them more accessible for me to use. Because when it's just one big pile, I mean, you're not going to go like, okay, I need some yellow yarn, and you're going to go like sifting through a giant messy pile like I had, like this, to pick out a couple little things. Whereas having them organized means I can just go to the yellow pile. So I definitely think this has been well worth it and has drastically reduced what will actually be waste. But I mean, we did pretty good. How long have I been doing this? Maybe we'll put it up on the screen. Actually, I'll just look. I've been filming for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Honestly, I thought that this would take potentially like an entire day to do. So if you have a big pile of scraps, maybe this will be helpful to see that maybe it won't take as long as you thought. And I think it's one of those things that you could easily not do all at once. You could definitely take a small, you know, take a handful of your scraps, sort them out, and then come back to it. I love to see it. I love to see there be this minimal pile of like just super, super short ends. That's a piece of fabric for some reason. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's have a look at all the different piles and how big they are. So we have a nice big pile of green. We have some like kind of orange and yellow. And I think I'm actually going to end up putting this pile in with this one. So this is going to be kind of all one. And maybe I can compile blue and green together, but is that a good idea? Would it be easier to keep them separate? I don't know. And then we have this nice big pink pile as well. We have the black, gray, beige, and brown all together in one pile. And then this massive bin of the off-white. So that's quite a bit of different colors. It actually is so satisfying to just like look at how pretty these all are. And then lastly, I have this bin, which I think I'm going to end up transferring into something else, maybe some bags actually, and I'll separate the colors. So yeah, that is, I think, all the scraps that I have. So we've got 4 bins now with all our different colors. I have to say, even though this took a long time, it was pretty satisfying to do. Now that I have all of my yarns separated and organized, I'm excited to do some more projects that feature scraps almost exclusively. So stay tuned for that. Let me know your scrap ideas in the comments below. And if you want to see a scrap project I have done in the past, check out this video next.